And one day we were listening to the radio.
Is where my kinfolk will let trees.
Kids were working summer. That didn't sound right.
When the sun comes back, when the first quail calls, follow the drinking gourd. For the old man is waiting for, carry you to freedom, follow the drinking gourd. Well, a riverbank is a mighty good road. Dead trees show you the way. Left foot, peg foot, traveling. Follow the drinking gourd.
This is the Centennial of Red Summer. I'd like to read some facts for you real quick. For those of you who don't know, that was the year that we had race riots all across the country. And from what I'm noticing, many of us will say that the climate is similar to that now. We're brewing. It's like we're just waiting with all the incarceration, mass incarceration, school systems broken, educational systems just amok, with police shootings and killings that are always considered justified homicide. We are getting in unemployment soaring. We're at that point where it feels like a big kettle on the stove about to burst us. As we do this podcast here with the PG County NAACP President, Mr. Bob Ross, to my left, Mr. Tony Jones, extraordinaire, and the one and only Mr. Paul Brock, the history maker.
When I was growing up in Washington, we'd come to Sherwood Road and go as far as the district line. Wouldn't cross our district line.
Really?
I grew up in a community where some of the most learned people lived, surrounded by the man who started Black History Month, from the man who named some of the things, who got some of the highest positions in government that blacks could attain. I'm talking about the 1930s now. And they all lived in the neighborhood because they couldn't live anyplace else. The man who was the first to set foot on the North Pole, the guy?
Mr. Hanson?
Yeah. Who lived in the next block, in the 1300 block of Orange Street.
Wow.
Everybody lived in the block. Joe Louis had a place on Orange Street. And we were surrounded by some of the most famous or learned, I should say, people who had that history.
Mr. Paul, when we talk about the Red Summer, can you reflect to us on some of the things?
Yeah, I first heard about it just by accident. And hearing about it, I was shocked and mad. Mad because I'd never heard about it in elementary school, junior high, or high school. I went to school here in Washington, D.C. all my life. And I thought we were taught by teachers who would tell you your history. and I never heard one word about that. And so I was mad after hearing about it and determined to spread the word. I took it to my National Association of Black Journalists, in which we had over 4,500 people attending, ready for some news. And none of them had heard of it. I took 20 copies of the Washington Post newspaper article about this story with me, and they ate it up like crazy. Some of the largest syndicated journalists there. Run out of copies. He said, well, can I have that copy? And I'll have it copied right here at the convention. They wanted that story because nobody had ever heard of it. So I was calling the writer of the story. And I said, was there a reason why in other cities blacks were lynched and killed in high numbers than Washington? He said, oh yeah, there was a reason. This is a white journalist now for the Washington Post. He said, I found out the reason was that here in Washington was one of the rare places where blacks fought back.
Follow the drinking gold. Follow the drinking gold. Follow the drinking gold. For the old man is waiting for to carry you to freedom. Follow the drinking gold.
Everyone was interested in the story. And of the 20 copies I took to the convention, they made copies of that. I want to do something to make sure more people get that story. I said, what happened to the journalists who wrote the story for the Post? What happened to the black community? He said, well, they were afraid. So I was determined, well, if one person has to do it, one person has to do it, that's
right.
all.
Absolutely.
But somebody has to do it. And I'm happy with knowing that you guys are working on it.
The railroad brothers used to take the news back south and distribute it along the railroad track.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
You know, and that's how a lot of found out about what was going on
Wow.
with the Red Summer, which was preset for Tulsa of 1921.
Okay.
Even though it looked like it died down, but it really hadn't. Racism was alive and well doing.
That's interesting that you said that in 1919.
So it started in 1919, and bring it on through to 1921 with Tulsa.
Okay.
There's a direct correlation
Okay.
between the two. If you go back even a little bit further for that, right after Reconstruction, you know, it was African Americans who had all the jobs, ex-slaves.
Right. That's right.
And one of the things that they did was create unions to give white folks jobs and want to put you out on the side. So it was a short period of time where it was boiling, and the Red Summer of 1919 was just the iceberg, tip of the iceberg.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but part of your history was, you know, with the filmmaking, and what you did for the NAACP and promoting that, which is a treasure here in this county. And a lot of people don't even know. They see you in the supermarket or passing, they know not what you've done. Tell us a little bit about that.
Ben Hooks, of course, was world famous, had been on the FCC, and then people were a little wary of not offering him a show because of his contacts in Washington. And when he became head of the National NAACP, he wanted to do a radio show.
Okay.
He always had a cause that he wanted to talk about. And he asked me to do the producing of it, and I learned how to produce the show and everything. And while doing that, I started then producing the National NAACP convention each year. And I said, I want to get somebody so that other people than just blacks will watch it. And the most popular person in radio and television at that time was Carl Rowan.
Okay.
So I called Carl and I said, listen, you're going to host this show. He said, well, you can't afford me, old buck. I said, I was thinking of paying you. Anyway, I got away without paying for 2 years. And he hosted the show. And I got other people who had part-time jobs in television around the country to volunteer their time doing the convention for the show. The show came out #1 on PBS
Wow.
first year. And we ran the show for about 5 years.
That's excellent. That's excellent.
Now, what was the History Maker show about?
The History Makers show was about getting our story about our heroes into the wide public. And the location, of course, was Chicago, and we went around the country doing the biographies of our famous people.
Okay.
We have over 3,000. Also, the National Association of Black Journalists. It was something we started for 47, I guess. This is the 40th year. And we had our largest crowd, over 5,000 people there in Miami. We're going to have that convention here in Washington. And the second week of July at the Sheridan Park, not the Sheridan Park, the Hilton up on Connecticut Avenue. I remember that convention.
That's a good one,
The
wasn't it?
blacks who really didn't want Shirley to run. And the leader of the 116th Street gang in New York,
Yeah.
he was one of them. I was down there. I took John Blake down with me. Because I had always gone to the convention before. But
But this one was.
this was the first one I took a radio station down and covered it.
To the radio.
John was late coming in, and I said, where the hell have you been? It was around 2 a.m. He said, I've been talking to this guy, this crippled guy outside of the convention door. I said, what crippled guy? He says, I don't know. His name was George something. It turned out to have been George Wallace.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
The great Dixiefrog governor of Alabama,
Exactly.
who stood on the steps of the school and said, not letting blacks in. Okay.
That
Wow.
same one.
Wow.
Spent about 2 hours with John just talking to him.
He had no idea who he was talking to.
John had no idea who it was. our family comes from a little small place in Virginia that's at the back of Mount Vernon, George Washington's home. It was the watering hole in between the two routes, major routes, Route 1 and the other route that leads down, you know, there in Virginia. I got to the point where I realized George Washington's history was attached, and he had a slave that he brought back from the battles in New Orleans, that he said, I'll set you free when Martha and I die. And he did. And he came home to Gum Springs. And I knew that history growing up. And I was proud of that history. I got to the point where I was broadcasting, and I would go down to George Washington's place, and they said, we're doing this documentary on George Washington, and we want you to narrate it.
Oh my. Wow. Wow.
I didn't, you know, they offered me money, so I said, okay. And I thought about, I did the narration, and that evening when I got home, I remember thinking how dirty I was. Because George Washington had been in that history of my family. And I really, really felt bad. My point, I grew up on Corcoran Street. I read a lot, but I was always ashamed of George Washington. You know, having a person in my family who'd been a slave to George Washington.
Ashamed? Were you ashamed, or were you probably angry or frustrated?
Angry. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Wow.
That's a history I haven't told very often.
What?
My version was Gordon Parks, directed it.
Gordon Parks.
Oh,
Right.
I hadn't heard the name in a long
I
time.
know.
And it was 12 Years a Slave.
Really?
Yeah. We made that 20 years before,
Really?
and this thing came out.
Sold into slavery.
Well, boy, how you feel now?
My name is Solomon North. I'm a free man, and you have no right whatsoever to detain me.
You're no free man. You're nothing but a Georgia runaway.
Went down to the river Jordan.
And that servant that don't obey his Lord shall be beaten with many stripes. That's scripture.
I'm stunned, flabbergasted, and just overall pleased. I would like to thank Tony Jones. I would like to thank Bob Ross. I'd like to thank Mr. Paul Brock, one and only. And this episode, and there's more to come, please go to the NAACP PG County YouTube page, or go to Connect to the Bridge on YouTube.